Chapter 1, The Turning Point. I maxed out my biggest credit card. In fact, a payment got declined because it took me over the £18,000 credit limit. I had other cards and they were already at their limits. I was devastated and I felt I'd hit rock bottom. Emotionally, in that moment, I began to unravel. I felt the blood drain from my face and I started crying uncontrollably. I didn't know what I was going to do. I hadn't told a soul about my debt. I never talked about it because I was so embarrassed by it. How could I tell someone else when I was unable to face the truth for myself? Then, a few days after I'd maxed out my last card, I was having a catch-up conversation with another coach. We'd exchanged coaching services in the past, and so there was a lovely bond between us. We were chatting about life and business, and it was great, but I was struggling to focus. Inside, I was like a pressure cooker, and I knew I had to say something, to confide in someone, just to feel some relief. She sensed my agitation and asked me what was wrong. I began talking. I told her about my debt situation and exactly how I was feeling about it. She listened intently. And, I can't remember what she said exactly, but I can remember what I heard. I heard her say, "People commit suicide over less debt, so you must be very strong." People commit suicide over less debt, so you must be very strong. Wow, that was my turning point. To this day, I have a gut feeling that she didn't actually say those words, which may seem strange to you, but I had to hear it in that way. My brain interpreted it in the way that achieved maximum impact and drove my decision to do everything in my power to change my situation once and for all. So, as I surveyed my situation, finding myself on my knees with a struggling business, deeper in debt than I'd ever been, and filled with shame at how my life was turning out, I felt like a complete fraud and a failure. At that moment, an unfamiliar rage rose up inside of me. How could I have allowed myself to get to this point? Suddenly I was livid, spewing in fact. What did I do? Where did I go so wrong? I'm a smart woman, a high achiever. I've got it all going on. I've got beautiful children, a loving and supportive family, my own home, an amazing boyfriend, and the freedom of my own business, doing what I love. Where is my power? As the fog of my anger cleared, I realized that nothing was going to change unless I changed. I had to take my power back. I had to take full responsibility for myself and my situation. I had to face up to some home truths and dive deep into the root causes. I made a commitment to myself that day that enough was enough. And that day was the day I decided that I was going to learn how to become debt-free forever. Now, I appreciate how very fortunate I am. I have a loving family and support. I have the wherewithal to understand that there is always a solution to every problem, and I am healthy and able to work. Many people don't have all or any of those things, and so the burden of overwhelming debt can feel like one that is too great to bear. So I decided to chronicle the journey, to track my highs and lows and record my progress with a desire to help others. Not only were the coach's words ringing in my ears, people commit suicide over less debt, but I knew of so many entrepreneurs who were crippled by their debts and as a result were unable to fully show up in their businesses. I thought, if I could break my own 23-year love-hate relationship with debt and change my circumstances, then surely this would serve others. I was excited by the prospect. The Hawthorne effect probably contributed to my success in staying the course here, which did not carry a high probability based on my track record for starting things but then failing to see them through. More on this later. Now, the Hawthorne effect is where subjects who take part in an experiment alter their behaviours because they're being observed. I felt like I was under the microscope for this endeavour, like I was the subject of an experiment. I logged, scrutinised, and analysed my thoughts, feelings, behaviours, and results every single day. What I didn't know when I started this process was how much of an emotional and spiritual journey I was embarking on. I used to believe I needed smarter strategies and budgeting, but that's not the case. I had to look within, deeper than I'd ever done before. And the more I explored and understood, the more beautiful, liberating, and awakening the experience. And this is available to everyone, including you. The first step to becoming debt-free is to become emotionally free from the anxiety and stress, to gain mastery over your thoughts and emotions when it comes to money and debt. I worked on overcoming the toxic nature of my relationship with money and the old patterns and beliefs that were perpetuating the debt. I had to overcome my lack mindset and my reliance on credit as a fallback. When you are emotionally free and the old negative patterns have been broken, then you can implement the strategies. Without this freedom, your decisions and judgments are impaired because you're operating within the fog of stress. Stress and anxiety cloud your ability to make conscious choices for yourself. It's said that success in any area is 80% psychology and 20% strategy. So to win at the game of life, you must master your mind. This book is largely about that 80%. This is the biggest piece of work that any of us must do to effect any sort of transformation, to achieve the results we want in life, and the emotionally charged subject of money and debt is no different. It's been immense, exciting, and exhilarating, and my understanding of how powerful we are is something that I've become totally passionate about sharing with everyone who wants to transform their lives and become paid in full once and for all. Being paid in full starts in the mind and in the heart, and it's a state of beingness that will bring so much clarity, lightness, and joy. I chose paid in full as my desired state rather than debt-free because words are powerful, right? And at the start of this journey, the word debt was too heavily loaded with negativity for me. I am a personal development junkie and I considered myself fluent in the law of attraction, yet I felt a victim to my subconscious blocks because as much as I worked on my mindset and staying positive, my results were devastating in terms of my finances. Throughout this process, I discovered how to overcome my subconscious blocks and free myself from them forever. True to form, I'm very impulsive and I don't hang about. Once I'd made my no-nonsense decision to become paid in full, I took immediate and unwavering action. I got clear on exactly what I was dealing with in terms of the amount of debt I had. I created a new spreadsheet detailing all of my incomings and outgoings, so I was clear on what I needed to make each month as a bare minimum. Now, as I read this, it sounds like a mechanical activity that I just completed without any emotion. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, my emotional response to finally facing up to the reality of the numbers was intensely painful. My whole body was shaking and I was caught off guard by the intensity of my feelings. I knew that I had to acknowledge my feelings and interpret the thoughts behind my intense emotions in order to eventually release them. From the start, I laid out my foundations of daily disciplines that I knew would be powerful for shifting my state from one of lack and fear to empowered and prosperous. This part was fun, and as with any new endeavour, I felt fresh, excited, and full of enthusiasm and hope. I continued through a process of connecting my mind and body to really understand and interpret my thoughts and feelings around debt. I connected to shame in a really big way as the overriding emotion and the one that was keeping me stuck in a negative holding pattern. I became a conscious observer of myself. I found me fascinating. I played with my understanding of the powerful law of attraction and I was enjoying some pretty fast results. Within a few short weeks, I'd signed 2 new clients into my business and managed to repay 2 of my smaller credit cards, and I was feeling great. As with all processes of change, after that initial burst of excitement and positive results, I stumbled across some major internal roadblocks. There were moments when I felt consumed with self-doubt and overwhelmed by negative mind chatter. At the same time as I was taking the daily steps to break my debt habit and chronicle the journey, I was also working on breathing new life into my coaching business. So my work was cut out for me to learn to manage my emotions around all of this change. I learned to become very adept at recognizing resistance and interpreting the sabotaging behaviors that can show up when we're making progress towards our goals. And as a result, I discovered ways to effectively overcome them. Now, I'm not religious by any stretch of the imagination. I was raised by atheist parents, and religious sermons would leave me bewildered and questioning, does anyone really believe this stuff? Yet I'd always longed for some deeper sense of connection with a broader perspective, and I believe through this process that I found what I was looking for. Life started taking on a whole new meaning as I was beginning to appreciate the truth of my power to create my own reality. Where I'd previously felt helpless and victim to my subconscious patterns, I began to feel in control. I realized that my subconscious blocks are only an issue when they're active, and my results revealed whether they were active or not. Wherever and whenever I experienced unwanted or unsatisfactory results, I tuned into my feelings on the subject and interpreted the thoughts behind them. This level of conscious awareness gave me more control to overcome my self-limiting beliefs and create new results. The more I learned about who I am, the more forgiving and compassionate I felt towards myself and the mistakes I'd made, and I moved into a state of increasing self-acceptance. My debt balance diminished as I neutralized all my negativity around it. The stranglehold it had on my heart released. I no longer gave it any attention or energy, and this wasn't about denial or avoidance as it had once been. I just felt liberated to direct all my energy towards creating my best life now. I'm thrilled to share my journey with you and impart my learnings that have changed my life for the better in every single way. In sharing the most vulnerable parts of my story and sharing some of the highlights from my own journal, my wish is that this inspires you to embark on your own empowering path. All you need is yourself and your own journal. Enjoy. You are more powerful than you realize.